The single biggest mistake tradie and service business owners make is not regularly measuring the performance of their business. Now, it's kind of like playing a game of football and not knowing the score. You just wouldn't do it. But we keep doing this in our businesses. Tune into today's podcast where we talk through why it's critical that you measure your business performance regularly. Howdy there, team. TFJ, Tony Fraser-Jones here, the Profitable Tradie podcast host with my co-host, Phil Smith. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, always good, mate. Ticking along.
You
Feeling good, feeling great.
It's good. Yeah. It's a lot of enthusiasm there, mate.
Well, man, I like to, come in nice and slow and then
just build up.
Just build that tension and then just bang, hit it later on,
Yeah. You don't need to do a block, lap of the block and come back as a, more
better version of myself.
More enthusiastic version of yourself.
Well, I was actually doing cartwheels before this, but I thought I'd tone it down just before we get started. Yeah.
This is an important topic, though, man. What are we digging into?
So today we're digging into how important it is to measure your business performance. So both, financial and also your key performance indicators that drive that financial result. So I think the majority of business owners review that result with the accountant after the fact, which is kind of like trying to drive a car while you're looking in the rear view mirror. It's not that helpful. And honestly, it's all really in the past. So put another way, you wouldn't play a game without knowing the score. Yet lots of business owners are way too busy, or they just lack the knowledge to keep score of their business. Or they track a few things, but not everything that's important, which is kind of like knowing the score, but not the opposition's score. So either way, it's not that helpful.
Yeah.
And we want to make this a wee bit easier for everyone today.
Like if there's one thing that we can get businesses to do that we work with, it's to measure their results.
100%.
Because everything changes when you start doing this. So, if you're kind of not doing that at the moment and you're listening, or you're doing it a little bit, this is going to be unbelievably helpful. It'll really help you get your head around why you need to do it, really.
Totally. Yep, massive. And I'm sure you got a story to kick us off.
I got a story. Yeah. It's a little bit scientific and out there, but I think it, demonstrates the point. In physics, there's something called the observer effect. And the best way to explain is really to give an example. Now, let's say you want to check the air pressure of a tire, a car or truck or your bike or whatever. It's actually really difficult to do that without actually affecting the air pressure of the tire. Normally when you put the valve on the tire, the little bit of air gets let out and some escapes as you measure the performance. Now, the same sort of thing happens. Well, that's called the observer effect. So it means that, when we pay attention to something, we look at something, we observe it, we measure it, it tends to change that thing.
Yeah.
Just because we're paying attention to it, it kind of buzzes me out because we see so many of our members have amazing transformations in their business just by doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's almost a little magical, but it works. And when you drill into it, it kind of makes... it's kind of common sense.
Yeah.
And an example is, I can remember a client that we worked with a few years ago, had a relatively large business, doing $2 or $3 million in revenue. Well, not huge, it's, medium-sized business, had massive cash flow problems. Like they owed the tax office over $200,000. They were struggling to pay their bills. The stress levels were, huge. They had like 15 people in the team. Might have even been 18, somewhere around there. And they had no real understanding. Well, they knew that they had no money. That was obvious. I mean,
you see that in the bank account.
Yeah, you see that in the bank account. Most of us measure that. We got a pretty good idea of the bank account because it's right there, and particularly if it's low. But they had no idea of the other numbers in the business. And the first thing we did was start to measure the gross profit margin on particular jobs. So start actually measuring jobs. And the first thing we found was that, these jobs, their gross margin for the jobs they're doing is around 20%, which is
not good.
Horrible.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make money at that level.
Pretty hard.
Yeah. And so, it's like, well, it's 20%. We knew that was horrible. And then these guys, Mark and Bevan with their names, started to look at this and look for the reasons why this was happening. And they started back costing the jobs, figured out they had a couple of clients where the margins were really, really low, 15, 18, 19%. And those particular jobs, one of them was with a particular client, a large group housing company. And, they figured out that, hey, these jobs were like 15 to 18 trips to each job just for a relatively simple house.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that's a problem, right? Hard to make money plumbing out a house when you know that many trips to site. And then why is there that many trips? Well, it's because there's disorganization. It's because we're not ordering stuff, or we're letting the client, get us there when they're not ready, and we're having to come 2 or 3 times just to, finish things off. And so a whole bunch of other stuff comes out of the woodwork when you actually start measuring the numbers, and that's how it works. You actually pay attention to it, you turn your mind to it, you start looking for the reasons why.
Yeah.
So it's kind of simple, but it's kind of magical too.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of simple. I think the thing here is, like, it feels magical, but there's actually not that much magic to it. I mean, if you do look, you will find. If you don't look, you can't find. And if you can't find, you can't improve. It's really that simple. And I think, this really does apply to everything. Whether you're looking at your numbers and you're seeing the story that's there, or whether you're looking at results that, you're measuring through the business in terms of KPIs with staff, like anything. If we keep score and we actually, people know we're looking as well, you find other people tend to lift their game too. I always think back, I think my mum was the master of this, actually. She used to do this thing when I was in primary school, elementary school, where she'd tell me, every night, I'm going to check all your homework. And I'd be like, oh man, all my homework. And so I'd go and I'd just make sure all my homework was done. And I only found out later in life, she'd actually only checked like very small part of it. But I thought she looked at all of it, so I got all of it done. And it's the same, like when you're looking at stuff, my mum was looking, technically, but she was only looking at a small portion. But because I knew she was looking, I lifted my game as well. So I think there's a dual benefit here, where you look, you do find, and the stuff that you can influence, but also you look at other people's stuff and they tend to influence their results too. Yeah, just because they know you're looking.
Yeah, your mum's smart, Mike, by the way. Very clever.
She had one other little trick with that as well, where she'd go through and whatever she checked, she'd say, I'm not sure that's done. And I'd be like, oh, God, and I'd go back and I'd redo it and I'd tweak things up and make it better. And I only found out later that she didn't even really look at it. She just would say, I'm not sure that's done, knowing that I probably had been lazy, and I'd go back and do better.
She knew you too well.
She knew me too well. But, hey, look, I think it's that whole thing. If I know someone's looking, I'll lift my game too.
Yeah. A couple that we worked with, Jason and Kirsty, one of the things they did was actually start checking the gross profit margin on every invoice before they actually sent the invoice. And they had a target for where they wanted those invoices to sit. Whereas before, they just, slap a margin on the materials and obviously have their charge out rate. So it was like time and materials, cost plus. But now they're actually aiming for a specific gross margin on each job. And if the job wasn't where they wanted it to be, they would tweak it.
Yeah.
And that drove a 14% increase in their gross margin across the board by paying attention to it. It's unbelievably powerful.
Yeah. Well, if you don't pay attention, you can't see what's there. Simple as that.
Simple as that. And how often do we get stuck in the day-to-day, look, I've just got to get the job done. I've just got to get the invoice out, and like that's kind of all we think about. Whereas really what we need to be thinking about, my 3 rules in business. Number 1 is get paid. Yep. That's the most important. Number 2 is get paid well. And this is what margin is about as well. Number 3 is obviously get paid consistently. You've got to do a good job and get repeat business. But
100%.
It's super important.
So if we don't have a process for dealing, with this kind of stuff and actually measuring what we need to measure, we're going to run into some problems, right?
Well, just fundamentally, you just don't get the results that you deserve or that you want or that you need to get. Your results just aren't there. You have very little information on why your results are where they're at. And I think this is a huge thing. Like, you can get incredibly frustrated, bash your head against a brick wall, but, I haven't got enough money and, we don't seem to be making that much profit. But if you're not really digging into it, you don't understand why.
Yeah.
And that is massively important.
There's a flip side to that as well, where you might think you understand, which is actually just as dangerous, right? Because if I think I understand what's going on, I'm going to run off and take a bunch of action to correct whatever I think is wrong. I might be barking up the wrong tree. And now I go and I expend all this energy and time and effort and brain power and put this in place, that in place, drive the guys, and it turns out that what I'm trying to improve isn't even an issue, and there's another issue that I would have seen if I actually just looked properly. Because often, if it was something that's as obvious as what you thought, if you don't confirm that, then, hey, look, you might just be reverting back to just your safe comfort zone of the stuff and you'll just improve the same thing every time, and there'll be diminishing returns on those improvements. Whereas if we're looking, we find there's actually more to it than we thought, or there's a different problem, and now we can be a lot more specific and and actually affect some real change.
Well, there's a classic problem here that just jumps to mind when you're talking about that, and it's when a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So you may be really you may understand your revenue and your sales, and you see some of the jobs you're doing, and the big jobs. They might be hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the type of work you do, and you're like really excited by that. And like, oh man, this is awesome. These are big jobs. And you get really excited about them. Like, oh, I want to get more of these big jobs. But when you actually analyze them and look at the profitability, they can be absolute,
Dogs.
Absolute dogs. And you keep trying to get more of these big jobs. And effectively what you're doing, if you think about an airplane, you're just flying it towards the ground quicker and quicker. And eventually you're going to run out of runway because you just run out of cash.
Mate, there's so many examples of this. I mean, I'm just thinking about a couple of calls I've had this week. Like, I remember one of our guys we've been talking to, and he was adamant that his GP had been declining because he'd actually been looking, he just hadn't been looking that much. All he'd been looking at was the GP result. And he said to himself, he's like, oh, it's because we've been working with this one client, the margin's a bit lower, blah, blah, blah. We dug into it a little bit deeper and we looked at, who was on each job and what type of job it was and things like that. And what we found is that the only actual correlation between the lower GP jobs was one particular member of his team that was on every single one of them. And so what we did is we swapped up his teams and we moved that guy, swapped him for a guy in another one of the crews. And we found that the new crew he was in, their jobs started having lower GP. And the crew he went out of, their GP jumped up immediately. And we just found out it was that guy. So the thing is you might have an assumption, but it might be wrong. And so unless you look, you can't find. Very important.
What's that saying about assumptions? Assuming something? I think it
makes
has
an ass out of you and me.
Yeah, has some sort of swear words in it. Some cuss words, but that's all right.
That's the one.
But you got to be very careful with assumptions because numbers tell you the story, plain and simple. And if you don't have the information, you're going to make some bad decisions.
Yeah.
Or not make decisions at all sometimes.
Well, mate, I'm just thinking another business. We had one of our boardroom squads this week and been looking through GP trends with one of the clients. Noticed that his GP tends to be super low one month, super high the next month, super low one month, super high the next month. And so we determined it's probably work in progress. What's actually happening is he's not measuring work in progress properly. And so he's spending a lot on materials in month A and then invoicing all those materials month B. And that's what's going on. But then what he hadn't realized is that every now and then there'd be 2 low months in a row. And I said, that's a bit weird because you'd think you'd be bouncing back month to month. So we looked a bit deeper into that and found out that actually that work in progress thing was true, but it had been masking some really bad pricing. Because in those low months, he's like, well, it's low because we bought heaps of materials for next month. But he didn't look any deeper. And because he didn't look any deeper, he missed the fact that there was actually a lot of really underperforming jobs in there. Because if that was the case, he shouldn't have had the double ups. It should have been pretty even month to month.
Yeah.
So.
And I can say categorically that those people who crush it, whether it's plumbing, electrical, painting, glazing, tiling, landscaping, whatever trade or service you're in, is that they're on top of their numbers, all over it like a rash.
Yeah, any good business for that matter.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm
like, show me a good business, I know they're across their numbers. Otherwise, how'd they get there?
Yeah,
simple as that.
Yeah.
Look, if we get this right, though, we get some pretty big benefits.
Well, I think the key thing is you actually, and we've touched on it, you can make changes because you understand the drivers of what's actually going on, so you can make decisions based on facts, not on assumptions or gut instinct. You get better results, 100%. And I think an important thing that, and if you're listening, you may feel a little bit out of control sometimes. You don't quite know what's going on. When you know your numbers, you actually feel in control of your destiny. It's better if it's not going well. It's better to know that it's not going well and to know why, so you can do something about it, rather than just sort of fumbling around in the dark. Well, that is not fun, and that really does mess with your head.
That's it. You don't want that.
You don't want to mess with your head.
You don't want to mess with your head.
Business is hard enough.
There's enough shit going on in my head anyway, mate. I don't need to add more.
Well, that is true. I wonder if we should just talk briefly about what gross profit is, because we've talked about that a bit.
Yeah,
and maybe if you're listening, you're not completely clear. This is the fundamental thing I think you need to understand. Gross profit is the profitability of your job.
Yeah.
And that's the engine room of profit in your business and what generates the cash. So really simply, it's your revenue for a job less all the direct costs of doing the job. So that's your materials, your direct labor, any equipment hire that you need to do that particular job. It doesn't include
Subcontractors.
subcontractors perhaps as well. It doesn't include all the overheads of running your business. So we've got to make sure that is profitable, and it tells us two really important things. How good is our pricing?
Yep.
How are we putting enough fat in the job at the start?
Yep.
Because if there's not enough fat when you price it, you're basically screwed, right?
Yeah.
And then the second part is how productive are your team. So are they getting through the job, based on the estimates and the materials that you put in the price? Simple as that.
Simple as that. And I think the big thing, guys, is when you hear us talk about what's a good GP or a bad GP, I mean, we say, earlier the example, 20%. The reason 20% is not much good is because as a gross profit number, you still have all your fixed costs to come off that. And for most trades businesses, your fixed costs or your operational expenses, your overheads, whatever you want to call them, the fact is they're probably going to sit somewhere between 18 to 28% of your revenue. So if your gross profit is only 20% and I've got to take 18 to 20%, 18 to 28 off that, at best I get 2% net.
Yeah, you got a problem.
At very best.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a problem.
Yeah, to flip it another way, your gross profit has to pay for your overheads and your profit.
Yeah.
And you should treat profit like an overhead. You need profit to be factored in. It's not something that's left over. You build it in at the start.
That's right.
Because you deserve to get paid. Otherwise, why would you be in business? It's actually quite hard work sometimes.
Yeah, and if you're not wanting to make profit, I've said it once, I'll say it again.
What are you doing?
Well, no, more than that. Deregister your business and re-register as a charity, because if you're not trying to make profit, just be a charity. You'll pay less tax. It's great.
Yeah, what's that Wall Street, with Michael Douglas? Greed is good. Yeah. I don't agree that greed is good, but profit is good.
For all profit's necessary. I mean, the definition of a business involves making profit,
commercial, profitable enterprise.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so if it's not profitable, it's not a business. It's a non-profit. So
charity
is
good, but not in your business.
That's right. Make enough profit that you can give charity.
100%. I like that.
Just from your profits, that's fine.
Yeah, does my head in when I see charitable trades businesses.
Yeah, well, I mean, who are you being charitable to? Like, you being charitable to your general contractors, your builders? I mean, you being, charitable to the school you work for? I mean, that's great. Like, nice for the school, but, like, you can't stay in business that way. And then how are you going to help the school in the future? So
hard for your family and you as well.
That's it. Anyway, how do we do this, mate?
Well, I think the first thing I think is let's understand that business is a game. It's a game. Yeah. It's a fun game, too. Like, it's great fun.
Yeah.
And when you play a game, you need to know the score.
Yeah.
And your financial numbers tell us the score.
100%.
So let's treat it like a game. We want to know our score, the opposition score, so we can figure out, are we on track?
Yeah.
Are we winning?
Yep. That's it.
And so that's important. Now, you're not going to know your competitors' scores, but what you compare to is the benchmarks and your budgets, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, you're competing against yourself anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a really important point. You don't need to know your competitors' scores in terms of, competing businesses. Like, the fact is like, I mean, we won't get into an abundance mindset too much here today. I think it's a whole nother topic. But I think the real fact here is you're not really in competition with other people. You're in competition with you. And you need to beat your own scores. That's what this is about. And I think, like, there's always a temptation, just one thing that I think crops up a lot, is a lot of people don't look at their numbers because, honestly, they don't want to see, because they know it's not pretty. And I think, like, that's actually a big risk, because if you think about sport or anything else where you keep score, it's important to see your losses. It's important to know what your deficits are.
Well, that's how you work. That's how you learn.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm losing, I need to know by how much, or otherwise, how can I ever catch up? Like, that's a big part of it. So I think the thing is, don't be afraid to see your numbers, guys. So even if you might be in for some disappointing results, you have to look.
Yeah, ignorance is not bliss, and ignorance is no defense with this stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a really famous business writer. He's dead just now, Phil.
Oh, you love that saying.
Yeah, I do.
Tony always loves to say, he's dead just now. So look out for that. And I reckon anytime you listen to the podcast, if you hear Tony say, he's dead just now, maybe chuck $1 in a jar. You'll be rich soon.
What you should do is you should like the podcast and leave us a review so everyone else can hear the goodness. I think that's what we should do.
Such a plug.
And he said, what gets measured gets improved. So I think that's huge. And it's like the observer effect. What gets measured gets improved, and what gets measured gets done.
100%.
So two really important things there. And, like we said, there's no point running a business if you can't, know the score. And I think many people do that, not only because they are a little bit concerned or afraid to find out what it is, but they're actually just too busy.
Yeah.
which is a terrible excuse.
Yeah.
It's like the most BS excuse ever. Like, how can you be too busy to figure out whether the game you're playing, whether you're winning or not?
Yeah.
And I say that with love, and it's like if you're listening, and I know you're probably busy, and you're like, well, I'm flat out. You probably need to give yourself a little bit of an uppercut.
Yeah.
Because this is the whole point.
Yep, that's right.
Was it too harsh there?
No, that's a super important point. So, hey, if anyone took offense to that, I think really important thing is stop, take a breath. Don't picture Tony's face just for a minute so you calm down. And at that point, just remember that probably if that hurt, the reason it hurts is because you're not doing it and it's true. So, honestly, this is a wake-up call for you.
And if you can plumb out a house or wire a house or build a garden, you're smart enough to figure this out. Because I think this is another thing. Sometimes, as tradespeople, we're like, oh, well, I'm sort of blue collar and I wasn't in the top class at school and blah, 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 blah. That's just this stuff. You can understand this 100%.
Mate, honestly, I hate that. I hate hearing people say that because honestly, like, if you're smart enough to wire a house, you are way smarter than most people. Like, honestly, 100%. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. Honestly, like, trades work is hard. It takes a lot of brain power. And it takes a lot of physical effort as well. It's really a very difficult thing. And I think the thing is like, this stuff is not rocket science. If you don't understand it, it's just because no one taught it to you. It's actually not that hard. And you definitely can do this.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Get into it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're smarter than the average person anyway, because you're actually someone who's invested in your learning. So you'll be fine.
That's it.
The thing is really simple. And I think we've talked about it. When you measure performance, when you do it, you compare it to some sort of standard, and then you start asking questions about the results. So when we talk about standards, we mean, you've got a budget or some benchmarks.
Yep.
Now, benchmarks are, like we use benchmarks in our $1 Million Tradie program. We know what sort of gross margin particular businesses should be hitting. We know what sort of net margin they should be hitting. We know what a good labour utilisation rate is.
Yep.
And so let's say, for example, a gross margin of 40% is the benchmark. You do your monthly P&L and you're like, well, my gross margin's 33%. Okay, well, it's 7% below the good benchmark for my type of business, so I need to start digging into why that is.
Yeah, that's it.
As simple as that. And even if you don't have some benchmarks, just take your figures for the last 2 or 3 months and start using them as a benchmark and trying to start beating those. That's a really good place to start.
Yeah, and it's that classic competition against yourself. Like, you think about someone who's playing golf. If I know that the benchmark for the course and the Pro Tour is that people usually hit about 7 under, and I'm currently making par on that course, well, then I know I've got to drop 7 shots if I want to play at the highest level. If I want to be able to win this round, this championship on this course, benchmark 7 under. So that's my goal. I know what I need to do.
How this works and why this works is, let's say you do have your profit and loss, and you had a 33% gross margin. You know the benchmark's 40%. You start investigating. So you look at all the areas that could affect that, and the first area you look at is, how's my pricing look? Is there opportunity to tweak the pricing? Can I put my hourly rate up? Can I put a bigger margin on materials? Can I maybe create some differentiation in my segments? So my like a classic example is maybe if you're a plumber, your gas work is has a slightly more technical nature, and that should be priced at a higher price.
Yeah, well, it's a skill not everyone has.
Yeah, so you tweak that up. You'll look at, hey, how many trips to the merchant, how many trips to the actual job site were there? Did that match up with what I projected? Did my labour estimates match up with what I projected? Well, actually, I estimated 37 hours, and this job took 51 hours. What happened?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there were some mistakes made. I had a couple of callbacks. I had to, maybe the guys didn't test all the range hood and the lights after wiring the house up, and a couple of them didn't work. Well, then I create a quality assurance process to have that stuff written down so that it gets ticked off and doesn't get missed next time. So it drives the actions and the projects that you need to do to actually improve it. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and there's levels to this, guys. Like, like on the face value, first thing you want to do is look at your jobs. If things are jumping out where it's not matching up what I predicted versus what actually happened, sure, we want to look at what went wrong and how can we improve that in the future. But I think the next level to this is looking at the trends in your numbers. I think this is crucial because, if we're looking at like back costing our jobs, for example, and essentially what we're looking for is discrepancy between what I estimated would happen and what actually happened in real life. And the discrepancy is most likely going to be labor. Because if you have a huge discrepancy in materials, that probably should have been a variation and you should have charged for it. So honestly,
which may be a thing you're figuring out. Actually, there's a whole lot of variations I'm not charging. I'm like just giving stuff away for free.
Exactly. So, I mean, that should be an easier fix. But on the other hand, like the blowouts that you'll probably see, the big discrepancies, are more likely to be labor. And if you go through and you're finding that, there's blowout in labor here, a big discrepancy in labor there, the first thing you're going to do is probably go back and talk to the guys. And when you talk to your team, what are they going to have? Starts with an E.
Oh.
Excuses.
Yeah, I was going to say explanations, but I don't think so.
Well, explanations, excuses, whatever you want to call them. But I think the thing with this is it's easy to say, excuses. But the real thing with excuses, often they actually just make sense. If I say, hey, Tony, what happened on this job? Like big overrun with labor. And you say, well, shit, man, I turned up, builder wasn't even there. I couldn't even get into the property. And, I was trying to do this and do that, but like no one was ready for me and I had to sit around for an hour. What am I going to do? I'll talk to the builder. Might change, might not. But the fact is, if I look at your last 10 jobs and I see that 6 out of those 10 jobs you had an overrun with labor, I'm like, well, I could look into them and probably each one might have an individual different excuse. But the fact is, more often than not, you overrun with labor. So I've got 2 choices. I need to make you faster, which is hard, or I need to put more fat into your jobs because maybe you just don't work as fast as I do. And maybe I'm, doing my estimates, my pricing. Maybe I'm doing that on how fast it would take me, but I'm a better tradesman than you. That's why I run the business, So I think the fact is when you look at the trends, often the reasons can start to actually become less relevant or the reasons stand out more. For example, the one I talked about earlier, where we found the only real correlation in the trend was the particular tradesman on the job. Or it might be a particular client you're working for. It might be a particular type of job. Maybe when I replace a faucet, a tap, we're always way under labor. But when I've got to put a whole vanity in, maybe we overrun every time. Yep. So, look, it's one of those things where when you look at the trends, often you see a much more concrete reason that you can action a lot more deliberately.
And the key thing with all of this is that you're getting feedback. So if without measuring your numbers and having some sort of target, you get no feedback, you can't improve. That's really basically what it is. It's like you're just constantly and never-ending improvement of your results when you measure them. If you don't measure them, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Maybe we should talk about, like we've talked a lot about why this is important. I think that was what I really wanted to share today because, if you're not doing this, I want to light a fire under your butt so you actually start doing this because this is...
Please start, guys, please. This
honestly,
is crucial.
this is incredible. Like we find that the people we help with this will get anywhere from a 5 to 10% increase in their gross profit. Now, if you are doing $100,000 in revenue a month, that's $5,000 to $10,000 extra gross margin a month.
Now,
that's $60,000 to $120,000 extra gross margin a year.
And I want to jump on this for a second, Tony. That's extra gross margin. It's probably actually extra net margin as well, because in order to find this, you probably haven't increased your overheads.
Not at all.
So the fact is that gross goes straight through to your net because no extra overhead comes off it. So it's literally just money in your back pocket.
It's amazing. And if you're not doing it, then you're leaving money on the table. I just encourage you with that. 5 to 10%, that's normal.
Yeah, totally.
But the things that we need to measure, there are some things, base level, I think we 100% need to measure. And that is, revenue.
Yep.
So how much of the sales?
Well, everything comes off that, right? I mean, because I could have a 50% gross profit, and that's great. But if that's a percentage of a low number, it's a low dollar figure. Whereas 100%. If it's a same percentage of a higher number, it's a higher dollar figure. Yep. So, revenue's important.
So revenue's important. Your gross profit is massively important.
That's
gross
your job
profit,
performance.
Yep, that's your job performance, both the number and the percentage.
Yep.
Your net profit, both as a number and as a percentage.
Yeah, well, that's why we're in the game.
100%. That's what we get at the end of the day. That's what we get to pay tax on. Happy days.
Yeah.
Happy days.
You're welcome, government.
Yeah. And we should definitely be measuring our accounts receivable and our accounts payable. So accounts receivable is money owed to you by the people you've done jobs for.
Yep.
We want to track that to make sure we're getting paid on time. And accounts payable is obviously the money we owe to suppliers.
Yeah.
So we don't want that to blow out.
Well, this is crucial because a lot of the time we can look at our revenue, our gross profit, our net profit, and we say, I'm making money.
Yeah.
But why is there nothing in the bank?
We ain't getting paid.
Yeah, you're not getting paid, or maybe you're really diligent with your payables and you're not so diligent getting those receivables in, and so you're always in a cash gap. There's lots of things here that you can find.
Yeah. So we want to do that at least every month for those things: revenue, GP, net profit, receivables, and payables. At least every month. At least. We definitely want to measure labor utilization, which is like what percentage of the time are we chargeable.
Yeah,
that's huge. As well. So those would be the starting point. There are lots of other stuff that you definitely can do and is helpful, but if you just did that as a starting point, will make a huge difference. It'll give you kind of the big picture view of where you're at.
Yeah, and if this sounds like gobbledygook to you, just remember we teach this stuff to our clients probably in under a month. Like the basic financial literacy is actually really easy to get your head around, guys. Like it's not rocket science. It's numbers on a page. It's literally basic addition, basic subtraction.
Yeah,
you'll get this real quick, super easy,
100%, and you'll thank yourself when you do. And look, this is so important. We actually have a KPI system for our clients. So every month they will submit their profit and loss and their balance sheet. We send it away somewhere, and some cool stuff happens, which I don't understand. Well, I know what happens, but
I don't know how to do it though. All those little automations that happen.
There's a bunch of stuff that happens, but basically what they come back with is the trends and all the information about where their financials at. It's just such a foundational skill. That's why we put so much effort into it. It's kind of like if you want to be healthier in life, just get a good night's sleep because everything's easier. Same with your business. Like doing your numbers is like getting a good night's sleep. It's just if you don't do it, actually nothing else is really going to work.
No, totally.
So, got to do your financials.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like in sport, right? I mean, there's fundamentals you have to have. If you play for most sports, if you don't have some level of base fitness, you're going to struggle. You might have all the skills in the world, but if you can't play for more than 5 minutes, you're going to struggle in the game, aren't you? Right. So, it's kind of the same thing, guys. Like this is base level fundamental stuff. This is, your fitness, if you will, that you need for the game of business.
100%. If you don't have accounting software, then you need to get it. And that can be, there's a whole bunch of them, Intuit, QuickBooks, Xero, MYOB. There's a bunch of them out there which are pretty easy to use. So definitely get that. And, you really need a job management system as well. Job management software, which, you can put the pricing into and order the materials through, put the labor against and do the reporting and the costing in there. That's going to make, you can do all this by hand, but why would you?
Yeah. I mean, you can sit there and, especially if you got volume, man.
You can't keep up.
That's just going to take too much time. So, your job management software did it instantly. It makes things a lot easier.
It does.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right.
Well, those are the things to do. So should we land this plane?
We should. Look, your business is the most important game that you play for most business owners. So I think it's absolutely vital that you keep score so you know whether you're winning and what you actually need to improve on. And the act of just keeping score regularly will dramatically improve your results. And I guarantee that. So remember, what gets measured gets improved. Thanks heaps for listening, and we'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.
Hey, I hope you liked the video. Check out all the other videos in the channel and like and subscribe.